Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Marc Noyce, and he's an urban food specialist, and the topic we'll be discussing is the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. So Marc, what are the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden?
The joys of urban gardening are multiple. There are so many joys of urban gardening, which include your own nutrition, your mental health, contacting and being in contact with your friends and reconnecting with your family that you haven't seen, your long lost aunt that you haven't seen for a while. Urban gardening just gives you that excuse to knock on the door and say, hey, I've got some food. Would you like to share a meal with me? I grew this in my own garden. And that's one of the things about being able to give, being able to look after something, looking after your own nutrition, looking after your friends and family. And that's really what the joys of urban farming is about. It's also about knowing where my food comes from. You know, growing your own food, you know what went into it, you watched it grow, you watched it mature, and then you know exactly where that food comes from. And not only that, it's fun. It is just fun to come home and see your garden. Like sometimes I talk to my plants. After a long day, I go out there and I say, hey plants, how are you going? And they seem happy to see me because if you give them the right things in terms of sunlight, water, food, they look after themselves, okay? And then they give back a healthy, nutritious food plant. So not only can we have individuals growing food, we can actually have communities growing food. And I get involved in schools, I get involved in community gardens, and where from nothing a community comes together, and sometimes people are quite isolated and they don't have any friends, they don't have any family nearby, and they're living in a very small space. So to be able to come to a urban farm and meet people, share food and share stories of how to grow food and tips and tricks. Schools are absolutely fantastic mechanisms to get young people into urban farming. Learning from the ground up how to look after yourself, how to look after others, from growing your own food at home and getting in contact with your food and learning about where your food comes from is just setting up a whole next level, next generation of urban farmers to be self-sufficient.
Marc, I live in a small urban environment. How can I overcome some of those challenges in creating my garden?
In cities, we live in a concrete jungle. Sometimes there's not a lot of space, sometimes there's not a lot of light, and we're busy too. So sometimes we don't have a lot of time to give to our plants. So these are real challenges. Wind's a really big problem in urban environments. It can get very windy. There are stray pets, there are bugs, there are things that want to eat all our produce. It seems like everything's against us in an urban environment. But these challenges can be overcome when you have the right technology, when you have the right approach, when you get your nutrition right for your plants, when you get the watering right, and if you can get your plants to self-water, if you can get your compost, you can close your nutrient loop by composting your own green waste at home, turning that into a resource for plants to grow, and closing our nutrient loop is really a great way of being self-sufficient and overcoming these challenges that cities have where our food waste is a one-way street. We can turn that around. Cities also have abundant stormwater or rainwater runoff, so we have an abundance of water, we have an abundance of nutrition in terms of food waste. We can turn those around in an urban environment to grow healthy, nutritious food, and we can do it in really small spaces.
What are some top tricks and tricks for our audience to create their own urban gardens?
It depends on what you're going to grow. So if you want to grow tomatoes, for example, they need a lot of sunlight. They need like up to 10 hours of sunlight a day. If you want to grow lettuce and herbs, well, some of these plants can survive and thrive, if you like, on only 4 hours of sunlight. So it really depends on where your balcony's placed, where your sunlight comes in, and what you want to grow. So knowing a little bit about the types of plants you want to grow really helps set up where you need to put them, helps set up your urban farm in terms of what produce you're going to get out, and you can grow a lot of food in a very small space. In some cases you can grow up to 25 kilos worth of food in just 1 square metre, which is amazing. So if you think about what an average person would consume in Australia, and that's 75 kilos of vegetables per annum. We should eat 150, but only 5% of Australians get to 150 kilograms of vegetable matter per annum. So we can get our average food consumption in only 3 square metres, which is amazing. So a tip would be find a space that's relatively sunny. Try to protect your plants from the wind as much as possible with either netting, and get yourself a wicking garden bed. Now, if you don't know a wicking garden bed, if you've ever put a dishcloth into the water, you see the water rise up out of the water up the dishcloth. Well, that's wicking. That is capillary action. So that's what draws water up from a water reservoir. And a wicking garden bed allows you to have a self-watering pot plant that has a water reservoir that is always making water available to the plants. And so if a plant has access to water whenever it needs it, it's going to be optimal, it's going to reach its full potential, and you're going to have a healthier garden every single time. Get the other things right in terms of soil nutrition, which is a high quality compost, something very fibrous to help draw that water up out of your wicking garden bed or your self-watering pot plant, and your plant will be as healthy as it possibly can. Get the right nutrition into the compost, and it'll have all the trace elements that it needs. So a good quality potting mix is essential. You can make your own potting mix by composting at home, taking your green waste and turning that into a nutritious source of food for your plants. And technology has come a long way with wicking garden beds these days. So you can have free draining and wicking in some of these systems, which is optimal.
Thanks, Marc. That's such good, useful information. If you'd like to know more about Marc Noyce and the benefits of creating your own urban garden bed, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, Jacqui Grant, an NDIS business consultant and empowerment coach, will be discussing the 3 fundamentals for a healthy working environment for neurodiverse people. Welcome back. Our second guest today is Jacqui Grant. She's an NDIS business consultant and empowerment coach. And the topic we'll be discussing today is the 3 fundamentals for a healthy workplace environment for neurodiverse people. Welcome, Jacqui.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Jacqui, please list for us the 3 fundamentals for a healthy workplace environment for neurodiverse people.
In the workplace, so many people who are neurodiverse or have neurodivergent traits, such as being autistic, ADHD, it comes with a lot of challenges. So one of the first things is that they are understood, like really understood for what they require as an individual. Number 2 is that the work environment is willing and able to support them. So for example, for some people, feeling overstimulated. It can be such a challenge with too many lights, too much noise. It can be quite distracting. For some people, dyslexia is a problem, but they can still do their job. They just require maybe voice to text to help them as a spell check, little things like that. As that continues to be evolving, like so some days traits are really good, like for example, hyper-focused, got the job done. Other days, nope, can't remember what those instructions were 5 minutes ago. Got part of it, but not all of it. So as a workplace creates those changes for the person, and they don't have to be expensive, the person can feel more comfortable and engaging in their job, and importantly, enjoy their job, which helps them to mask less, helps them to increase their energy and be a big part of the team. And the third thing is that they are having some allowances for those times when they're just not coping. For example, if they're triggered with what is commonly known as a meltdown. So it could just be going into overwhelm and needing to be able to walk away, going to a quiet place, being able to get up and leave their workstation to have that time out. Could be a walk around the park, it could be a walk outside, it could simply just taking some time away from everybody to feel calm, centered and grounded.
How does understanding the individual help?
So when it comes to being neurodiverse, everybody's unique, just as everybody's unique that's neurotypical. In the workplace though, if you understand each individual's requirements who are neurodiverse, and we focus on that more because it can be very overwhelming and confronting for the person who has neurodivergent traits. So when you understand as an employee, as well as the manager, as well as the co-worker, that your person that you work with has these uniqueness, these traits that they may need to follow. For example, for some people who have both ASD or on the autism spectrum and ADHD, some days they like to follow the rules and they understand exactly where everything is. But on other days, ADHD is a bit more at play, so that hyperactivity, that spontaneity, and it's like, no, there's too many steps to go from looking for a file, for example. By understanding that as a manager, you have a staff member that needs to make adaptations as to where to find that file or that information, can make their job so much easier, which in turn makes your job so much easier. So understanding each individual's requirements makes the workplace much better, not just for that individual, but for everyone else. And then as part of that, productivity can go up, more likely that everybody will show up to work because it is an all-inclusive environment, and especially for the person who is neurodivergent. One of the traits that I have as a person who has the diagnosis of ADHD as well as ASD or autism is my hyperfocus. Once I focus on a task, it's done.
If you were neurodiverse in your workplace and hesitant to talk to your manager about your needs, what's some advice you could offer to initiate this conversation with your co-workers and your manager?
Basically, there's a couple of steps with that advice. One is really get to know yourself as an individual. Like, think of your worst day that you may experience in your workplace first and write that down. Like, what is my worst day? If I get overwhelmed, if I get exhausted, am I likely to storm out of the workplace? Like, am I likely to sit in the corner and cry? Am I likely to just, complain to everybody and overshare? Like, what's the worst case that can happen? And then from there, you can say, what do I need to minimize that occurring in my job? So thinking about the job, thinking about the worst case scenario and bringing that together. And then as you bring that together, you can then say to your manager, so I'd start with the manager first and say, I'd just like to have a conversation with you about some of the things that I find challenging in the workplace that I would really like to minimize those challenges to make it so that I can come to work every day, enjoy it and do my best job. And having that positive approach of being the team player and wanting to make it work and knowing your worst case and explaining that the best way you can will make all the difference, because your manager is then potentially seeing it not so much as a challenge, but as something that, I want to work with that person. I want to help them to be part of the team and bring out their strengths, because when we bring out strengths in ourselves and each other, the workplace, for example, is such a better place. And really take your time then to have that conversation with the manager in a space that there's plenty of time. If you need to bring some evidence that helps back up your, with my dyslexia, I found that this works, so an app or something, and having the expectation of being heard, that you open communication around solving the challenge and and having the solution. Now, if you're still having trouble articulating your specific needs, then having a coach that can actually help you articulate that can be a great place. And then for it to ripple out into your co-workers, you then say to your manager, look, can we let people know that, when they're constantly calling me, it's actually quite triggering, or whatever it is, and then seeing how a team approach can happen.
That's such important information. Thanks, Jacqui. If you'd like to know more about the 3 fundamentals for creating a safe working environment for neurodiverse people and Jacqui Grant, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned, and after the break we have international meditation teacher and coach Daniella D'Amore talking about a balanced life through spiritual growth. Welcome back. We have international meditation teacher and coach Daniella D'Amore, and the topic we'll be discussing is the importance of a balanced lifestyle through spiritual growth. Welcome, Daniella.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Why is spirituality important for a balanced life?
Spirituality is just as vital in our life as it is to understand our physical body. Right? So if we focus on our physical body and don't focus on our spiritual life, then we don't have a greater sense of purpose in our life. Right? I feel that it's important to balance the physical, the emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies in order to align ourselves to perfect health and well-being, and therefore create a much more healthier and happier lifestyle. It's important to balance all 4 bodies.
Daniella, what's your personal journey in discovering spirituality for a balanced life?
Well, can I say I've had many journeys that really emphasize the importance of spirituality. But as a young girl, starting out in life, and when I became a woman, I had a lot of issues, health issues with my monthly cycle. And we know today it's called endometriosis, but back then it wasn't diagnosed like that. And it was, very uncomfortable, and I was just given medicine to take. Well, in my feeling, my sense was, no, this is not right. This is supposed to be natural. So why am I taking medicine? No. So I seeked out alternative ways to heal myself through this. And so I did go to a naturopath, I went to acupuncturist, and I started meditation. And over the next few years, I just found that it's, I had good months and I had bad months, but there wasn't that consistency anymore of the uncomfortable feeling. And about 7 years later, I was able to have cycles with no pain, because I chose a more spiritual way of dealing with it. But at the same time, I was healing my physical body, sure, but there was a lot of emotional stuff connected to that as well. So in the process of getting that healing through various channels, my emotional body and mental body also started to change. And I became a big advocate for meditation. Meditation became part of my everyday life, and just healthier choices, health and various things that accompany that. The good thing about that is when I went through menopause as well, it just happened. Like there was no side effects or anything. And I know that that was based on the fact that I took care of myself on a physical, emotional, mental and spiritual level, right? I started to embrace my whole self as a woman, having this human experience. And of course I saw the results of that, in due course. And to make that story come full circle, I lived in the United States for a number of years, and during that time I was very honoured to be able to spend time with Native people there in mostly Arizona, New Mexico and South Dakota. And having spent time with the Native women there, I realised that a lot of them did not have the same issues around cycles, monthly cycles, as Western women do. So I explored that a little bit and asked them, various questions. And what I realised was it's something that's actually celebrated. When a young girl becomes a woman, there's a whole ceremony and it's celebrated, and the whole tribe celebrates. Everybody comes out and celebrates it. So it's something that's really embraced because now she can create life, right? So these Native women already start their cycle in a celebratory type way. It's not a stressful thing. And then they maintain spirituality throughout their whole life. They do women's circles and various things, women's gathering, but spirituality is very much a part of their culture, all of the tribes. So it's something that is part of their upbringing. What I found was that they just didn't stress about things the way we did, and there was no expectation, if you will, for them to be anything other than the beautiful women that they are. Whereas I feel in our society, women feel they have to step into a different role, to compete with men sometimes, so we neglect our femininity. Whereas they embrace their femininity and their feminine power. And it's a beautiful thing. And they all supported each other through that. So what that helped me realise was that what I was feeling as a young girl really had some substance. Why was I thinking that? I don't know where that came from. I just knew that it was natural for women to be like this and to find the supportive system. So that was really confirming and very affirming as well, because it affirmed how powerful it is for us to embrace who we are. We as women in the Western world, our own power, our own femininity. And of course for men to embrace their own masculinity. Who they are. And we play specific roles in that power. So when we can embrace that, we're much more powerful. And our bodies will reflect that, right? But in order to embrace that, there has to be that spiritual side, that meaningful, purposeful, that part of ourselves that we feel is missing. No, it's right here. We've just got to embrace it.
Daniella, that was a great story.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Do you have any advice for our viewers to have a balanced life spiritually?
Well, my advice would be to just listen to their inner self, because that's where our spiritual body resides, somewhere inside of us. Most people will say it's in your heart, but it can be anywhere. It can be in your toe. I don't know where you feel, whatever you feel. But think about how you feel when you see a sunrise or a sunset. There's something magical about that, and we can feel that magic within us. It makes us stop and look at it and go, wow. Or when a rainbow appears, and we all want the rainbow to be magic, magical, and we have a sense of that. Well, that's our spiritual body responding to that. So it's already happening. It's just a matter of making yourself more conscious of how you feel in that moment and knowing that you have those feelings throughout the day and they're important. They're an important element to who you are. And then to seek it out more. So how can you get that feeling more and more? Through what? Through whatever makes you happy, really. Whatever you do that makes you happy, whatever hobby, or maybe there's people, maybe there's places, things that you like to do that makes you feel happy inside, do more of that. That's all. Because that's called loving yourself. And the more and more you love yourself, the more and more spirituality you're living in your life.
Thank you, Daniella. That was such valuable information. If you'd like to know more about Daniella and how to have a more balanced lifestyle through spiritual growth, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we're going to say bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next week. Stay tuned.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.